Hi, I'm Paul Laney, the Vice President of National Sales for Turnkey Corrections and retired Sheriff of Cass County, North Dakota.
And I'm Lauren Matthews, and I'm the current social media and content specialist for Turnkey.
And you are listening to Jail Talk. And this week on Jail Talk, we have a pretty cool part 1, part 2 for you. Something I'm very excited about because this topic, one, hits close to home from my previous life as sheriff, but because of the man sitting next to me here. So while I'm also going to give a shout out to the people of Cass County, North Dakota for letting us have your sheriff for a couple days here, it's exciting to have him here because this is my successor. When I retired from running for sheriff or from my sheriff life, this is the man who ran for the office, somebody I strongly supported, knew he was the future of Cass County, and here you sit now 3 years into your first term already. Sheriff Jesse Jahner of the Cass County Sheriff's Office. Welcome to Jail Talk. Lauren and I are so excited to have you here today.
Yeah, thank you guys both. I'm very, very excited to be here, and of course to hang out with you again. We don't obviously get a chance to do that very much anymore, but certainly always a pleasure to get together with you. And much like you mentioned in the beginning here, all the support that you've given me over my years in law enforcement when you were the sheriff, and just happy to be here and spend some time with you guys.
It is exciting for me in that, and it's kind of fun to give a shout out to the old crew. I've been gone almost 3 years now, but you never really leave, and it's here so much time. It's weird that now we see each other a couple times a year, and we used to see each other every single day. So I just know the font of information in this man's head, and we're going to extract it out. It's a kind of a privilege for me and for Lauren to share him and his knowledge and the topic that we're going to talk about today with you all.
Well, to kick us off, Sheriff, why don't you share with everyone a little bit about your career and how you got to where you are now?
Sure. Well, very much like I just mentioned a few seconds ago, I've been very fortunate throughout my career to have two really good sheriffs. I started off with Sheriff Redneck, who was at the sheriff's office for a short period of time, and then most recently Sheriff Laney, who I spent a number of years with in many different capacities of law enforcement, both as a SWAT member and as the sheriff of Cass County, and he's given me a lot of opportunities to get where I am today. We're going to talk about some of those today, and some of the opportunities that he's given me, and where I've kind of taken some of those opportunities. So, but I started off at the sheriff's office in '98. I started off as a correctional officer, and worked my way up to patrol. Did patrol for a few years, and then kind of looked at my career and decided, hey, at some point throughout my law enforcement career here, I might want to eventually lead an organization. And I knew in order to do that, I was going to have to put myself in positions where I could gain as much knowledge in the different facets of law enforcement as I could. And again, mentioning in reference to Sheriff Laney, the different opportunities that he provided in accommodating me in those avenues. So, but I spent some time in investigations, narcotics investigations. I supervised the Metro Area Street Crimes Unit for a period of time. Stand-up investigations, was a captain overseeing our field services division, and then spent 17 years on SWAT. And part of that time, Sheriff Laney was my commander. So, again, we've just spent a number of years together, and I've been very fortunate to do the things that I've been able to do.
It's funny, you look back, and I remember when he first came in, and I like to joke and always say, I raised you from a puppy, and now look at you,
Yeah.
But in a serious way, I also remember when you first came to the sheriff's office and you first came in, he hadn't found the weight room yet, but it wasn't too long after.
A little later after then. But
he did find the weight room, and now that tall, skinny guy that walked into the sheriff's office is the mountain that walks into the room.
Yeah, and that was really for a couple of reasons. Number one, just the extra weight that we needed to carry on SWAT, being physically able to do that in the amount of being on standoffs for 12, 14 hours and being able to wear 80 pounds extra in gear. So making sure that I could do that, but then also just both physically and mentally for myself, because this profession is just so stressful. And so that's really a way for me every day to get into the gym and just relieve my mind. That's my time where I'm not thinking about law enforcement and the way that I can keep myself healthy.
Well, you're definitely one of those that follows that we had Kimberly Miller on here who talks about, you're strong in body, strong in mind, and the mental health aspect of it. You were always a role model for that. But and we could probably do a whole episode on how you implement that kind of stuff and that physical fitness. But
sure.
we're actually here to talk to him about a topic that I think is so relevant in our communities today. my time as sheriff, what I found is a very relevant thing, and kind of how it's grown and where you've taken it to. And we're going to talk about the importance of active shooter training to your communities, not so much within your agencies, but to the communities as a whole. And I will say this is something that Sheriff Jahner, when he was working with me back when I was sheriff, had a vision of where he wanted this to go within the organization. Obviously, we worked so closely together. You were one of my command officers, and we just kind of unleashed you and let you go to. It wasn't even just a job; it was a passion for you. And we're going to talk about this today and how we did that. And with that, I guess relay to our listeners, because as you all know, our goal with this is that you all walk away from our show saying, that wasn't a waste of my time. And we try to bring in caliber training like Sheriff Jahner here so that you can walk away from this show after part 1 and part 2 and say, I'm doing that. That's a great idea. And as we always joke and say, when you copy in college, it's plagiarism. When you copy in the real world, it's best practices. And we hope today you're going to walk out and have a best practice that you can say, I'm going to go do that, and I'm going to make myself a better sheriff's office or law enforcement agency, and I'm going to make my community safer. So let's talk about how it all began. I mean, obviously I was there, so that's a loaded question. I remember how it all began, but they don't, and Lauren doesn't, and Lauren's very curious about this.
Yeah,
some good talks, and I was there when it started. But tell our listeners about this path. And what was your motivation to bring an entire community and an entire county? And we have close to, almost 200,000 people in our region. Why did you want to do this?
Sure. Well, there's a lot of reasons and a lot of benefits that come from putting a program together like this, especially for the community. And really, initially when I got it started, there were a couple reasons why I wanted to do it. Number one, as I mentioned in the beginning, I come from a tactical background with my years on SWAT, and I trained with law enforcement, for many years, and trained law enforcement officers on critical incident response, active shooter response, and through that knowledge, I understood in teaching law enforcement that, hey, you know what, in a critical incident, especially an active shooter type situation, seconds matter to save lives. And so anything that we could do, whether it was on the law enforcement end and teaching law enforcement how to respond and work collaboratively together to do a quicker response, or it was on the business end, the school end, and teaching our citizens what they can do if they find themselves in that situation to assist in our response. Because if they're responding in a certain way that we would be expecting them to respond, then it's going to increase our response time, and it's going to save lives, hopefully. So that's one aspect of it. The other aspect is building relationships. It was very important to me and to you and Cass County Sheriff's Office, as we all work together, to build those relationships with our community. And one way to do that is to get out, to educate our community, to work with our citizens collaboratively and bring this information to them so that we can make it safer, because the overall goal is public safety. And if we can save lives by doing this, why wouldn't we want to do that?
Absolutely. And, as any of you listening, with those of us that were tasked with protecting our communities, and we're going to bring you through step by step a lot of this, both here in part 1 and then in part 2, and when we explain how to implement it, and you kind of go into detail about who you should contact and who you should communicate with and all that, and kind of laying a roadmap out for you. But, I remember when he came to me, when he wanted to do this, and we've been so intricately involved in a lot of things with everything from the community to schools and all that, and we're going to go into that here in a little bit. But I remember thinking to myself, when you wanted to do this, okay, he's out representing me. He's out representing our office, and what's the good, the bad, and the ugly for this, because I live with the repercussions, and I had to beat up all that. And it didn't take me long to realize there's no downside to this. And any flack that I get, I'll deal with. But you go to sleep at night hoping and praying you aren't going to get that call that you have that active shooter, you have that situation. When we all go out into the field, we all expect something can happen to us in a situation like that. But to get that call that there is a gunman in the lobby of the hospital, or in the lobby, going through the cafeteria at the school, or there's an active shooter within a business, or and so you kind of have, and I had to ask myself and look in the mirror. So how am I a better sheriff? I'm a better sheriff because he's going to go out there and he's going to get these people ready. And it didn't take us long to decide we're going to just, for lack of better terms, unleash you and let you go do what you were really good at. And that's such a strong thing. And I can't emphasize it enough to our listeners that it will make you better. I mean, for any of the feedback, any blowback, we're going to talk about that a little bit. The success of where it's going to go, I think, is so much stronger.
Yeah, and very much like you said, I mean, I needed that support to initially get it started. I had that with you, and then it was a matter of just putting the program together and going with it and gaining that support from our community to do it. So,
well, I'm just a few years out of school, so I mean, school safety is obviously really important to me. But now, obviously, I'm in the workforce, and that's important to me as well. But I can imagine the training for that is a little bit different. So when you go into and doing these trainings, what are the differences when you're going into a school and training versus going into, say, like a business in the community and training?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And the environment from a business and a school can be a lot different. We know statistically, as I was researching and putting this program together, I know statistically that a majority of these situations are going to happen in businesses, but there are a large percentage that happen in schools. And most times when I ask people when I'm teaching the course, hey, where do you think a majority of these incidents happen? They're going to say schools, and that's certainly not far off from the truth. The reason that's the common answer is because a lot of times when an active threat shooter happens in a school environment, that's obviously very tragic because children are involved, and that gets more, or tends to, for some reason, get more media attention. And so people kind of draw to that. But we know that a majority of these happen in businesses as well. So when we put this program together, I wanted to bring it to both the schools, which we already had some of that in place, and then also the businesses. But to go back to your original question, it is different because when we're teaching things in the school environment, we might be teaching this to first graders, second graders, third graders, right? And when we're concentrating on teaching this, we don't want to traumatize them, right, but we also want them to understand the importance of the safety aspect of this. So we just have to, when we're teaching between or distinguishing between the two, there's just a little bit of different terminology that we use, but in general, the response tactics are the same, and we want to keep it that way because if the schools are doing the same things that the businesses are doing, our law enforcement officers then know what they're responding to and what they can expect in those situations. But both situations very key. In our particular area, we're very active in instructing with our schools and the businesses.
One of the things we were so proud of in our area was our Class-Clay Unified School Response, where we brought like 14 school districts together. That was kind of unheard of at the time, is that everybody was going to cooperate and everybody was going to come on, and we can do a show about that all on its own sometime, and we probably will. But when you talk about that, and in the schools, after a lot of the school shootings, there was a lot of public support for that. And people were like, we got to protect our children. Protecting your kids, those innocent lives, that's a big thing. A lot of people didn't think about the work environment as much. And then you started seeing some of those situations like Lorna was talking about that, what kind of feedback did you get from the businesses when you started doing this? Did they start coming to you? And again, obviously this is a loaded question because I know, but what did you feel and what did you see? Because you were the point man. I mean, they would call, and granted, a lot of times I'd go to a social event, or I'd go to one of the service clubs, and pretty soon they're all like, hey, we've heard about this captain that's out there doing this, and this. And I'm like, yeah, I might have met him too. And, I'll have them call you. And I started getting that, I started going into the public and I started seeing, wow, this is really resonating. And I'm a public figure. Let's face it, to every one of you that are listening in the sheriff's world anyway, we're elected. And how do we get elected and keep getting elected? Because the public believes in what we're doing and what we're delivering to them. And I quickly realized this is gaining a lot of support. And this is something that we're doing a community service that nobody else can really do. And it's incumbent upon us to do this. What kind of support did you see from the businesses? And then how did it grow from there?
Sure. Well, initially, of course, when we started teaching in the business world, it was kind of a little bit new. I mean, there had been some instruction. There were some businesses who were going out and looking for the instruction privately and bringing that into the area. And I really looked at it like, hey, again, this was an opportunity for us to work collaboratively with our businesses, build that relationship. But at the same time, I think we can bring a little bit of a different aspect to this. And so, I just started reaching out to a few businesses and doing the instruction. And then it was just very much like you said, word of mouth. I mean, business owners start talking with other business owners and talking about now how they're putting together an emergency response plan for their business and how important that is, because we talk about that in the class. And then it just was a matter of, receiving those phone calls and getting the information out to our businesses as to what we were exactly teaching and what they could expect from the course, because we didn't want them to be nervous about bringing it in. And so really, it just kind of grew from there. And of course, there were some social media aspects there from our agency where we did some advertising, and we need to get the information out that way. We put together some brochures. We had our patrol deputies as they were out and they were building their community relations, stopping into businesses and just mentioning that the class was available and that we offered it. And a lot of times I was getting the question, hey, do you guys charge for this? And I think there was a little bit of reluctance right away because people thought that we were trying to charge for that, and we weren't. I mean, this was something that we wanted to bring as a service to our citizens and provide that to them because we wanted to give back to them. They're obviously, paying taxes so that they can have the service, and we want to give back to them. So that was, I guess, there was a lot of different aspects to it, but a lot of it was word of mouth and just getting out and doing it.
And I think a big part of that for our listeners is, and Jesse, in the next segment especially, when we do part 2, he's going to go more into the nuts and bolts of what he teaches and how he teaches and some of that. But we, as we all know, like I was talking about earlier, that impact with the community and that trust of the community, these are some of the ways you do that. Because It's not just about enforcing the law, that protect and serve. We protect. When we're called to protect a domestic violence situation, a bank robbery, an assault, or a fight process, we're coming. And we're coming in hard, and we got to do what we got to do. At the same time, there's that serve. There's that sheepdog guardian aspect of it. And this is that guardian aspect of it where you're preparing your community. You're developing trust with your community because they start believing in you. They start seeing past the shell of the law enforcement officer and the quality that's behind it. And it only reflects well on you and your agency that now you're building that trust. Now you're building that community partnership. Now you're building that. And not just words, it's actions. You're getting it done. That was so important to you.
Yeah, so important. I mean, especially now, and I know most of the people that are going to view this are thinking the same. I mean, now more than ever is an important time for law enforcement to build those relationships with the community. And not only that, but get education out to them, because there's a lot of misinformation out there. So by going out, building these relationships, teaching classes like this, it's providing education to our citizens so they know why we're doing what we're doing, okay, and why we respond a certain way. And so, it's extremely important piece of at least the Cass County Sheriff's Office and what we bring to our citizens, and how we want to work with them, how we want to work collaboratively with them and partner with them.
I see this, and you hit on something when you said that, and you look at across the country right now, a sliver of the bad that's out there, and certainly that has to be dealt with and cannot ever be tolerated, but it's a sliver of the bad is what's getting all the media attention and all the talk that it's what's happening, when in reality, this is what's really happening out there. Law enforcement agencies engaged, and it's a way for all of you and your communities to take something to another level. If you're not doing something like this, I think it's our goal. When Lauren and I talked about bringing you in, it was like, man, this really arms them with something they can go out and do, and if they're not already doing it, they can do that, because it really is a sliver of the bad. And we as law enforcement need to emphasize and show the good that we do every day in those partnerships that we have.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And like you said with the sliver, I mean, law enforcement is out making millions of contacts with people daily, weekly. And, from time to time, law enforcement's going to make mistakes. Certainly don't justify those by any means. But there's millions of interactions that take place every day that are positive. And, that's what we really need to focus on. And then this is just another way for us to get out and work with our citizens other than that, that traffic stop that we might have with them. This is that positive way where we can build that trust with them.
Right. So let me ask you this. We've talked about that. Kind of leads me to my next question. Have you received any criticism or questions about you teaching this within the community? And again, I could probably answer part of that because when we first started this, but from you yourself and now as you've taken it to the next level, have you received any blowback?
You know what? Not really, but I would just start off by saying this. We have really good support in our community. We're really lucky in Cass County. I can be out daily and have people come up and thank me for my service, thank our deputies for our service. So we're really fortunate that way. We didn't really receive a lot of negative feedback. I mean, I think that anytime a business organization can bring law enforcement in to talk about a subject and educate themselves, I think they look at that as a positive thing. That's why they reach out. So we really didn't have anything. Initially, when we started the course, we wanted to make sure that people understood what the content of the course was. I mean, we're not. Anytime that I start my class, I always preface it with I'm not teaching this to make you paranoid. I'm teaching this to prepare you,
right.
to prepare your mind. It's unfortunate that we have to talk about it, but it's reality.
It's reality.
It's happening, and
exactly.
And so we just want people to be prepared. And so when I go out and teach this to a business, the idea is to relate it to their business setting, so we can look at their environment that they're working in. But then I also want them to take things away where they can incorporate it into their daily lives and personal safety, because they might find themselves out at a shopping center and something bad happens there, right? So anything that we taught them during the class at their business, they can now use some of those tools when they're out with their family to help protect their family. And so we really sell the class that way, and people really bought into that. And they really understand that it is a way to protect themselves. And so we really haven't received a lot. I mean, one thing that I would mention is, working for the sheriff's office, we're teaching this. I'm teaching this in all jurisdictions within the sheriff's office. And some of those.
You had a question on that. That was actually something you brought up earlier. When you brought up, and I'm like, we should ask that in the show. And I think that leads perfectly into that is exactly that.
Yeah, my question was in relation to this message and your jurisdictions. How do you go about teaching this without stepping on other people's toes around you?
Yeah, excellent question, because that is one thing that we really paid attention to when we got started with this, because I was working for the sheriff's office. We have jurisdiction over all of Cass County, but we also have municipal police departments within that jurisdiction. And certainly, we want to make sure that we're all working together there as well. Again, very fortunate in our area that we don't have these turf battles, so to speak, amongst agencies. We all work really well together. But when I'm teaching this, I'm also including those agencies. And our effort is actually a collaborative effort. So with Fargo PD and West Fargo PD and myself, when we kicked this thing off, we did a press conference with all three agencies saying that we were going to be bringing this to the community and that we're going to be working together on it. And we're lucky, again, like I said, because we have those relationships. Mm-hmm. But as law enforcement, we also all train together. So we're going to be teaching the same stuff anyways, and all of those agencies know that. But anytime that I go teach it inside the city limits, I invite an officer to come there with me and work together with me and teach it.
And that was one of the things, having been in that role at the time, and having the chief over at Fargo and having the chief in West Fargo. And it was one of those things, again, it's communication. It's here's what we're doing, and we're not trying to step on your toes. We're not trying to, but we're getting this demand, and this is a way that we can all work together. Like you said, bring your beat officer, bring it. And we didn't really have a lot of issues. I certainly had a question initially from someone who was like, "What's the intent here? What are you doing?" Our intent's to educate, and we're not going to say no to any business that would ask us to do this. And we're certainly going to invite you to be part of this. And they quickly realized too, there's no threat here. They're not trying to one up us or do anything like that. It's about readiness, and we're blessed in our area that we have that cooperative area. I should say our area. I don't live there anymore, but the area you're in now. But at that time was, we had a joint SWAT team, we had a joint bomb squad, we had joint crisis negotiations. We have a joint dispatch center. Mm-hmm. The philosophy is, one team, and we have our own departments and our own jurisdictions and our own things to do. And I thought we walked that line pretty well, and I think you're still seeing that today, correct?
Yeah, we are. I mean, we've had a few obstacles lately with a law change in Minnesota with the use of force law, and we're trying to work through some of those things right now, and working with our Minnesota partners. But
I won't get you going with that one.
That's today.
A whole other story. We'll say that a whole other story. You want to see his dander get up, go down that road.
And if you talk about talking for a couple hours, that's probably a 5-hour discussion. So, but no, we've all worked very well together, and again, it's really just a matter of reaching out. And when we started this thing, I mean, that was part of us getting the grant that I think we're going to talk about in the second part of this, and how we put the class together, was making sure that when we got the grant that we had all agencies on board and everyone was going to work together. So,
Well, I tell you what, we are coming to the end of the episode, and that we've kind of set the stage for the next episode. We talked about the who, the what, the why, and how it all started. And if it has spurred any questions, I know you're certainly available. You're an active duty sheriff. Reach out to Sheriff Jahner. Can I say that?
Yes, I would love. I mean, anyone watching this, if you want to put something together like this, certainly can reach out at any point. I'm obviously not the end-all be-all, but I certainly could add input and give you some advice on what worked for us and what maybe didn't work. So,
well, and we'll put your email address up at the bottom of the screen, and feel free to reach out to Sheriff Jahner. And I know how super busy you are, and it might take a little while to get back to you, but we are one team, and he's happy to do that. And if for some reason, for whatever, you can't get a hold of him, reach out to us here at Jail Talk, and we'll put you in touch with a good sheriff and get that done. So as we come to the end of this show, I'm excited to talk about part 2 is going to be coming up next, where we're going to go right into the implementation of it. But before we do that, Lauren's got something to say.
Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter and Instagram at JailTalk Podcast, or you can email us at jailtalkpodcast@gmail.com.
You've been listening to Jail Talk. I'm Paul Laney.
And I'm Lauren Matthews.
We'll see you next time.